Welcome to Manhwa Nirvana. This recap is an extension of the previous one. If you haven't watched it yet, make sure to check it out first to stay in the loop with the story. The scene starts with the contract of service. We get to know more about it. The contract stated that the Emperor and the Argasa clan provide each other with what they need, and any traitor will meet a horrific death. This contract was once a symbol of loyalty and a mark of honor, but after the Emperor's death, it became a dreadful curse. And as we have already seen, his death had no effect on the contract. It binds the Argasa clan to eternal service as the Emperor's herald. What seemed like an unending cycle of servitude to Argasa finally began to show signs of breaking when the Herald clan intervened in the Tarsar Kingdom's succession war and obtained victory. During the war, they secured a copy of the Book of the Divine King, but a notorious traitor stole the book and fled. His name was Acker. We see some people shouting down from a cliff at Acker, who is bound in chains, saying, "Acker, the traitor, give us what you stole. If not, the curse will kill you." They continue, "Hand over the copy of the Divine King before you taste the most horrific pain." Wondering what this horrific pain could be, the clan threatened Acker with all kinds of methods, but their hope shattered to pieces and disappeared in the end, because Acker scattered the book in the heart of the world mountain range. And so, Acker became the first person to die from the curse of the contract. Because of the curse, he gave birth to twins in a male body, Azadin and Ariel, the twin siblings. Oh, not gonna comment about this. Ironically, among the two, Ariel became the strongest herald in the clan's history. We see Ariel, but her face is hidden. That's some mystery. Whereas Azadin was rumored to be a fool, we then see Azadin in the desert. Median wonders who spread such absurd rumors. Azadin then tells them, "I already stated that I have no intention of taking you in, so don't follow." Lian replies, "We are not following you. We just have something to deliver," and shows Azadin a letter, stating that it's a letter from the regional head of Salsma. Azadin clicks his tongue and says, "That old man doesn't like me that much." He takes the letter and reads it. In it, half of the letter is scolding him. Ignoring that, he reads that it tells him copies of the Book of the Divine King have been appearing recently. He needs to retrieve them, and it will be reflected in his performance review. Judging from what's written here, the other heralds must already be aware of this copy. Azadin, after reading it, asks them, "Were you aware of the copies of the book?" As Medium says that she knows about the book and mentions her father betrayed the clan, before she can finish her sentence, Ishmael yells and kicks her in the leg, shouting, "Shut the hell up." She asks, "What was that for?" And Ishmael stares at her. Azadin stops them and wonders to himself, even these two know about the book. For now, I'll have to head to Salsma to meet the regional head. He thanks them for delivering the letter. As we see Medium stretch the hell out of Ishmael's cheek, she says, "We're heading to the same destination, so we can just follow you. We'll tell you what's been happening in the clan too." She makes a cute face while Ishmael, holding his cheek, says, "It hurts." Azadin replies, "I don't own the road, so do as you wish." As they walk, Medium quickly runs ahead happily, while Ishmael sighs out of relief. Sometime later, they finally reach the edge of the wasteland and are now about to enter a grassy area. They have mounts now too. While Azadin is sleeping, he wakes up and hits a post-nap stretch, telling the other two to get up as well. They continue walking with their new llamas, and Azadin tells them, "There's a spring up ahead." They're both still sleepy, but they see water for the first time in a while. They reach the fall and both start refilling their water, but suddenly, they hear a voice. "You there?" They see a group of men approaching like ants drawn to a flame. One of them continues, "Who said you could take water from our spring?" Azadin replies calmly, "We have no intention of fighting you. What do you want in return?" He stops Medium and Ishmael from reacting. The men smile, and their leader says, "All of you, of course." Azadin sighs and asks, "Is there really no room for compromise?" The leader sneers and says, "You've got a lot to say for a grown man. What's with that mask? Are you a clown or something?" Then he orders his men, capture the girl alive and kill the other two. As expected, the next scene shifts to show all the men defeated, kneeling on the ground, begging for mercy. "Please, spare us. We're innocent people, they cry, trembling. Aidan is sighing and ignoring them, while Medium and Ishmael stand there in shock. Not bandits? They ask in unison, baffled by the men's pitiful behavior. The men continue, explaining that they were recently conscripted by Margrave Cazel's children, who are drafting people left and right. They lament that they were ordered to find something they don't even know about, and ended up wandering aimlessly. By sheer misfortune, or rather, the man quickly corrects himself, saying, great fortune, they encountered someone as noble as Aidan. Medium narrows her eyes and asks if they might just be thieves coming up with excuses. Aidan shakes his head. I doubt it. This isn't a road where merchants or travelers pass by. Medium shrugs. In that case, we'll just have to kill them to silence them. She begins to draw her blade, but Aidan stops her, saying, I don't kill without reason. She looks surprised. Ishmael, however, chimes in saying, it's only right to kill them. Even if they're truly good people, there's a chance they could expose our tracks if we let them live. Aidan replies firmly, that doesn't mean I should kill them for my own comfort. Everybody deserves a second chance. One of the men seizes the opportunity, nodding eagerly. He's right. People's lives are important. I expected nothing less from someone so noble. The leader starts laughing. You're the best. I'm sure great fortune will be upon you and your family for showing us mercy. Aidan glares at them and snaps, shut the hell up. Meanwhile, Ishmael watches thoughtfully, thinking to himself that he has met people before who refused to kill, but he never expected to see someone like that from the Herald clan. Without warning, Aidan straight up delivers a Saitama punch to the leader's face, sending him flying to the ground. The impact is so severe that it destroys one of the man's eyes. Aidan stands over him and says coldly, that was a nice punch. It clearly destroyed your eye. Now, don't move too much. One wrong move, and it won't just be your eye, your brain will probably explode too. The men, terrified, cry out, you promised to spare us. Aidan stares them down and replies, this is my spring, but sparing you doesn't mean I won't leave a mark. Now, you won't be able to harm others even if you don't repent right away. The group stares at him in disbelief, wondering what in the name of God they've just heard. Meanwhile, Medium and Ishmael are sitting nearby, observing the scene. Medium sighs. Well, I guess this is fine too. Ishmael nods in agreement, watching as Aidan walks away, leaving the men trembling and nursing their wounds. Sometime later, the men are seen running away, crying hysterically and muttering funny things. I'll never have kids now, one of them wails. Another gasps, my balls, they're gone. He didn't just take our eyes, but, comes painfully clear, Aidan isn't just a marksman. He's also, unfortunately, ball freak. The leader, however, isn't done. He curses under his breath, vowing, if I ever meet that bastard again, will. But before he can finish his sentence, a massive hand appears behind him, grabbing his head in a tight, brutal grip. His eyes widen in horror as the others stop in their tracks. Oh my God, one of them whispers. In an instant, the leader's head is ripped clean off in a gruesome, blood-splattering scene. The rest of the men, now trembling, slowly turn around to see the owner of the hand, a giant, monstrous creature. The beast snarls, its sharp teeth gleaming in the light. He grabs one of the fleeing men by the leg and lifts him effortlessly into the air. With a chilling grin, it continues, you are portable food. You belong to me now. The creature refers to itself as Goldo, towering over the men, its basket filled with struggling victims. As the screams of the captured men echo in the background, a group of goblins appears, swarming the body of the dead leader. They tear into the flesh ravenously, devouring him with primal hunger. Goldo, meanwhile, flashes an evil smile as he shifts his gaze toward a distant human village. With its walls and fortifications visible on the horizon, the beast licks its lips and mutters darkly, human village. Big and strong fortress. Meat everywhere. We see Medium, Ishmael, and Aidan continue riding on their llamas. Medium says, at first, she thought he was going to go easy, so she was surprised, but she guesses it wasn't a bad tactic. They even retrieved all their weapons, she adds. Aidan replies, It's hard for one to understand others without having been in the same position. Losing an eye has bigger consequences than you would think. The people they would have victimized for their raids are now the people they fear. He continues, I'm sure it's a good opportunity for them to repent for their past actions. Ishmael responds, an opportunity to repent. You spared them and even gave them a chance to cleanse their souls. We see a beautiful scene of the sky as they dismount their llamas. Aidan continues, the conversation is bothering me. Liam asks, which conversation? Aidan replies, they said that Margrave Kazel is searching for a copy of the Book of the Divine King. Ishmael says, but Margrave Kazel lost the succession fight. Why is he looking for the book? Do you think perhaps he's trying to climb up the ranks by using the book to gain power? Aidan thinks for a moment. A political figure determined to obtain power. That's dangerous, he says as he removes his mask, revealing that he is a herald. We'll have to be careful until we're out of Margrave Kazel's territory. While Ishmael and Medium stand there shocked, it's revealed that our Chad MC doesn't have eyes, only scars where they should be. They freeze as Aidan puts on a robe to disguise himself. Ishmael finally asks, how do you not struggle despite being unable to see? Aidan replies, I don't know either. I've been able to see without eyes from the time I was born. Medium, surprised, with her mouth open, steps forward. Aidan looks at her and asks, what is it? Speak your mind. Medium says that she just thinks he probably looks better with the scar. Aidan asks what she means, and she explains, you were probably really hot, and then suffered an accident where you lost your eyes. It feels like it's better to have scars like this than a hot face with ugly eyes. Ishmael scolds her, saying, you're being very rude. But Aidan replies, she's saying the same thing as the one who gave me the wound on my face. Medium is surprised. Who was it? She asks. Aidan says, it was none other than Ariel. But Aidan tells them, it's fine. They continue walking forward toward the same fortress that the ogre was seen looking at earlier. As night falls, they finally arrive. The guards are doing inspections out front. Ishmael says, I can see the gates, but the line looks pretty long. The guards are conducting a very thorough inspection, and even pocketing some of the goods they're supposed to be checking. Medium says, they're just stealing. Ishmael adds, it wasn't this bad when I was last here. Aidan responds, I see. If they're looking at it this thoroughly, then I might have an idea. One of the men in line asks Aidan, can't you see? Aidan replies, I cannot. These two are just on a pilgrimage with me. The man says, that must be pretty hard. Aidan shrugs it off. Not at all. What's going on here? The man explains, you haven't heard the rumors? Copies of the Book of the Divine King are going around. They say some Herald clan member made copies of the book after stealing it. Now, these copies are appearing everywhere, and all the bastard sons under Margrave Kazel are hunting for them. It's a complete mess. Aidan mutters, that means there's more than just that one loser I met. And the old man, Medium asks what he means. But Aidan brushes it off. It's nothing. This isn't good, he thinks to himself. He knows he has one of the pages on him, which is going to make the situation annoying to deal with. Suddenly, a man being inspected protests, I need that to feed my family. Why are you taking my money? A guard punches the man in the face, causing him to fall to the floor. A grimoire can take many shapes and forms. Who knows? Maybe his grimoire is in the shape of money. They'll inspect it real close and return it if it's not the book they're seeking. His daughter then steps up, saying, this is stealing, so give it back. The guards start insulting her, asking, are you really talking back? If you are, then maybe you need a beating. Her father hugs her, saying, you're threatening a young child with violence. One of the guards sneers, shut up, and punches him in the stomach. The girl starts comforting her father, and the guard smirks, you should do a better job raising your child. They call for the next group to step up. Medium is visibly angry. Ishmael asks, what should we do? Medium wonders aloud, should we fight? But Aidan stops them. Wait, he says calmly. Suddenly, a man runs up, whispering something to the guard, startling him. Azadan notices the commotion and immediately understands that something isn't right. The guards begin panicking, grabbing their belongings, and rushing inside. Everyone else in line is confused, wondering what's happening. Azadan turns to Medium and Ishmael, saying, "An ogre was spotted nearby." They both look at him in shock. "What do you mean?" Medium asks. Azadan explains, "I have really good hearing. I overheard them saying an ogre is nearby. That's why they're closing the gates." The crowd starts banging on the gate, shouting, "We can talk about this. Let us in." The scene shifts to a carriage, where we see a man approach. He is introduced as Tarkiv, one of Margrave Kazel's children. He asks the guards, "Did you close the gates?" They confirm, "Yes, we did." Tarkiv says, "Since there are no copies of the book here, we should just head out with what we've taken." And a soldier runs up, calling out to Tarkiv, "What should we do now?" Tarkiv replies nonchalantly, "You need to fend off the ogre and any other monsters that get close to the gate. You've been trained sufficiently to deal with them, so you should be fine." The soldier protests, "We've only been trained for a day. Maybe we should at least let the people outside come in." Tarkiv scoffs, "You're not even a knight. What are you capable of?" The soldier bites his tongue, thinking he doesn't want to hear this from a so-called knight who's running away. But Tarkiv adds, "I'll leave it to you." That's good enough. As Tarkiv's carriage rides off, the soldier watches nervously, sweat forming on his brow. The ground begins to shake, and nearby birds scatter in fear. The scene jumps to one of the bandits trapped in a basket, trembling. "Are we going to be eaten?" he whispers, shaking in terror. He peeks out from the side, his eyes widening in surprise. He sees an entire group of goblins following the ogre, marching toward the village. As the scene shifts to the night, we see people with carriages moving away from the village. A woman holding a lantern turns toward Azadan, saying, "The road's going to get rougher from here on out." She hands Ishmael a lantern, adding, "Guide your younger sister and uncle well." Ishmael thanks her, saying, "I'll take care of my uncle, so please don't worry." Medium laughs, patting Azadan on the back, and says, "It looks like people act much nicer when you play blind." Back at the gates, just before they left, we see the villager who was punched earlier standing before the group, addressing everyone. "The knights and mercenaries have run, but we must protect the village. If you can fight, please stay behind and help. If not, just provide support while we hold the line. This way, everyone else can flee a little faster." The man then turns to his daughter Cassette and says, "I'll fight to protect you." She frowns, crossing her arms. "What are you talking about? You can't even cut an apple." Azadan watches the people who chose to stay behind and fight, a shadow of thought crossing his face. Medium, still frustrated, says, "I can't believe it. The knights, who are supposed to serve the people, ran away. How disgraceful and pathetic." Azadan replies calmly, "They may be the people of Wybris, but rather than thinking of it as casting out those they're meant to protect, they likely see it as a noble sacrifice to stay and defend." Medium sighs, folding her arms. "I guess so, but it'd still be odd for an Aragazan to sympathize with the people of Wybris." Azadan gives a faint smile. "I feel the same way." He then steps forward, turning to Ishmael and Medium. "It's time for us to part ways," he says. Suddenly, a cool, black, ghost-like aura begins to surround him, and before either of them can respond, he vanishes into the night, leaving only his stick behind. Medium and Ishmael both yell, "Where did he go?" The scene shifts to the fortress, where everyone is standing guard. Cassette's father approaches the captain, his voice trembling. "There are too many of them." The camera pans to reveal not just goblins, but green ORCs marching alongside a massive ogre. The ogre steps forward, his booming voice echoing, "My name is Goldo." He tosses his basket of captives onto the ground, the people inside tumbling out, trembling with fear. Goldo grins wickedly. "This basket stores meat, keeps my food fresh for a long time. If you invest in my food market, it'll be good for you." Goldo suddenly raises his massive foot and slams it into the ground, shaking the earth beneath him. "I'll take as many of you as I can," he roars. The captain shouts, "The ogre is their leader. Ready your arrows. Fire at will." The archers release their bows, but most of the arrows fall short of the castle walls. A few find their mark, piercing Goldo's thick skin, but they only seem to enrage him further. Behind the ogre, a sly goblin shaman with the staff smirks. "Goldo!" it yells. "Smash the gate while they're distracted." Goldo bellows, grabbing a nearby boulder, and begins charging toward the gates. As he hurls it, the boulder smashes into the walls, causing parts of the structure to crumble. The goblins charge forward, some carrying crude shields to deflect the incoming arrows, while others hack away at the gate with axes. Goldo picks up another boulder, but as he throws it, it crashes down on some of his own goblin allies. Chaos erupts. The villagers behind the gate struggle to keep it up. Cassette's father grips his bow tightly, looking back with a pained expression. "Cassette," he whispers to himself, "I hope you're far enough away by now." The goblin shaman behind the basket begins chanting. Flames swirl around its staff as it raises it into the air. The wand has responded. It cries out, "The Book of the Divine King is here." But before it can finish, a shadow descends upon it, and it's violently stomped into the dirt. Aidan emerges from the chaos, launching himself into the air using the overturned basket as a springboard. He soars above Goldo, who's readying another boulder to throw at the fortress. Goldo hurls it toward the walls, where Cassette's father and another villager stand, but Aidan intercepts it just in time. He pulls them both out of harm's way, dropping them to safety. The captain stares in disbelief. "Who is that?" Aidan lands gracefully and replies, "Just a passing herald of the emperor." The captain stiffens. "A herald clan member," he mutters, fear creeping into his voice. Aidan doesn't answer. He draws his bow with practiced ease, leaping off the wall and releasing 2 rapid shots. The arrows find their target, striking Goldo in both eyes. Goldo howls in pain, thrashing wildly. "I'll kill you," he roars, but his blind rage only results in him stomping on his goblin allies, crushing them beneath his massive feet. Aidan smirks, standing on Goldo's head as the ogre swings wildly. "Exactly what I was hoping for," he says, firing more arrows at the goblins below, thinning their ranks. The captain watches in awe. Is he a slayer of sanctity? As the battle rages on, the overturned basket falls over, and Aidan glances at it. One of the bandits he had encountered earlier crawls out, his face pale and tears streaming down his cheeks. The man freezes as he looks past Aidan, his eyes widening in horror. The shaman, thought to be dead, begins to transform. Its body twists and contorts as it chants, "The Book of the Divine King. I will be the king of the fang." Its arms grow into grotesque, mangled tentacles, its mouth salivating as rows of jagged teeth emerge. The creature lunges forward, but before it can strike, its head is severed clean from its body. Tentacles writhe briefly before the entire mass collapses to the ground. Motionless, Aidan exhales sharply, surveying the remains. "That's going to be a pain," he mutters. As the grotesque tentacles from the transforming monster begin to lash out, one shoots directly toward Goldo. Aidan notices and leaps off Goldo's head just in time, leaving the massive ogre to fend for himself. The tentacle slams into Goldo, wrapping around him and pulling him closer as the creature begins to rip him apart. Goldo screams in agony, thrashing wildly. "It hurts. I love eating, but I don't like being eaten." His voice grows weaker as the monster engulfs him completely. The other goblins and ORCs scatter in panic, abandoning the fight to avoid the same fate. Aidan lands gracefully on the ground, his gaze fixed on the writhing creature. It continues to morph, its shape swelling grotesquely, transforming into something even more horrifying. The citizens on the wall watch in terror, clutching their weapons tightly. Aidan narrows his eyes. "This form," he mutters under his breath. "It's Godkin Kurt, the king of the fang." As the monster swells and reshapes, the shaman from earlier emerges from within, his twisted body now fused with the monstrous entity. He clutches his staff, a maniacal grin spreading across his face. The staff begins to glow with an ominous light, releasing a beam that shoots through the air. The beam streaks toward Aidan, and he dodges, watching as it carves a path straight for the page he carries. He realizes what the shaman is after. The shaman cackles, his voice booming across the battlefield. "Servants of Yigas, hand over the book of the divine king. If you do, I will grant you a swift, painless death. Before the shaman can finish his villainous declaration, an arrow whistles past him, grazing his cheek. Aidan is already lowering his bow, clearly not in the mood for theatrics. You talk too much, he mutters. The shaman snarls, his earlier smugness replaced by rage. The glow of his staff intensifies as he raises it again, but Aidan realizes something troubling. His quiver is empty. He grips his bow tightly, his sharp mind already analyzing the situation. The monster, now fully transformed into Godkin Kurt, lashes out with one of its massive tentacles. Aidan sidesteps the attack effortlessly, the ground shaking from the force of the strike. As he moves, Aidan's thoughts race. Why are they searching for copies of the Book of the Divine King? What is their endgame? The shaman sneers, his laughter echoing. You cannot escape, Herald. The page belongs to the King of the Fang. The glowing staff fires another beam toward Aidan, who narrowly avoids it, his expression darkening as the battle intensifies. Anyways, he continues evading its attack after attack. But of course, the Thing's allies aren't safe either, as they are getting caught up in the crossfire. One of them even has some purple liquid raining on it, which starts burning it. Godkin yells, calling him impudent while unleashing even more of its tentacles. As Aidan runs away from it, he realizes where he's running towards. It's a sword, and it blocks his path. Aidan grabs onto the sword, realizing he has to fight. He turns, raising his sword to fight off the tentacles. Of course, he's not just skilled with the bow, as he demonstrates, he's also good with the sword, as he starts sending the Thing's claws flying through the air one after the other, making his way forward. He says, "These fangs are too big for its body," as they fall to the ground. He says that fangs with shallow roots are weak. Godkin Kurt tells him to shut up, reminding him that he is the king of the fang. Aidan laughs, saying, "No, he's not, and he's just worthless kin made by the king of the fang instead." This time, he doesn't just stop by cutting the fangs off of the tentacle. He cuts it in half entirely. The sword then gets corroded in that purple liquid, and he throws it away, saying that he knew that wouldn't last for long. Kurt takes this chance to attack with even more, seeing that he does not have a weapon anymore. Aidan says that, low-key, he is working at a loss by doing this without even receiving gold coins. We see them launching a barrage of arrows forward. It starts to push Kurt backward, away from Aidan, buying him time. The captain says that they have to help the Herald no matter what happens. They say that helping the Herald clan feels a bit weird, and if the king's church hears about this, they will be charged and executed. He says they were abandoned by those very people, wondering why they should fear their punishment when they gave up on them. They realize he's right, and Cosette's father draws his bow, saying that he doesn't want to die here. As he launches the first arrow, he readies another one, saying they're just attacking monsters, and after they kill it, they can go for the Herald clan member or whatever next. They all start agreeing with him, saying that's the perfect plan, and this is why they decided to help him in the first place. As Kurt is getting riddled with arrows now, Aidan sighs and says they should have just given him the arrows to begin with. He stretches, saying that he guesses it's time to get started. He picks up one of the fangs off the ground and throws it forward, exploding where it lands. He starts to laugh, saying this much should be enough. He raises another one and starts launching a barrage of them, one after the other. Kurt starts to get pissed, asking, how dare he? Aidan asks why he's so mad, saying that he's just returning his fangs. Kurt yells, saying that he's going to become an even greater being than he is now, and as Aidan raises a giant one this time and throws it forward, saying surely Kurt understands that he's a slayer of sanctity, we see it go straight through Kurt's skull. That is badass. Then he raises another one, saying that his job is to eliminate things like this, as he throws this one forward, cutting off Kurt's head as it bounces along the floor. It comes to a stop. We see that in its final moments, it was pure anger. The monster then starts to crumble on itself, falling apart, and he says, with this, it's over. He goes to reach for the staff, only to hear the captain yell out, calling him a soulless heathen. When he turns around, they're all raising their arrows at him, and Aidan says that's pretty rude, and they might make a mistake and fire. The captain asks what he's planning and why he helped them with the monsters. The villagers start saying that he probably brought them here, saying that no matter how they think about it, it's weird that they would only show up when he did, and that it's all his fault to begin with. No words for these hopeless people. They continue to criticize him, but as Aidan replies he doesn't know why the monster arrived either, and he just fulfilled his duties according to the golden coins, and that someone used one to make a wish for them. They are surprised, asking who wished to the demon of the golden coin. They start to panic, wondering who it could be, saying they know they've been struggling, but to wish for the Herald clan is too much. One of the men asks if that person is present currently, and he says he's not obligated to tell them that, nor does he have the authority to do so. They start to panic, and he asks if he can leave now, or will they fight him for the king's church, despite having been raided by the noble bastard clan and abandoned. One of the citizens tells him to stop talking badly about their faith, and as Aidan laughs, saying of course, they are faithful citizens. As he walks away, we see the person from earlier still alive, asking if it's finally over, and he looks over, only to spot Aidan and gets terrified that he lived. Aidan, looking cool, tells him to be kind as he has been given a second opportunity at life. Bro starts crying as Aidan leaves and jumps off the ground, jumping up to the castle wall. As they point their bows at him, the captain yells, telling them not to attack. Aidan steps down, grabbing a handful of arrows out of their giant quiver. He says he's just going to take a few, asking if that's okay. The captain thanks him, and Aidan calls him a fool, saying if the right person had heard him, he definitely would have been executed. But we see him smiling back on the trails as Aidan is dashing through the forest with the owl right behind him. The owl asks why he lied to them, and he says that they would have lived in fear because they had gotten involved with him. The owl asks if he doesn't resent them, as they treated him like that even though he saved them. He tells them that humans are weak, and either way, they were nice to him when he was pretending to be blind, so they do deserve to be praised. But he is pretty tired because he had to run all the way here, and it's even worse that he had to do it without being paid a golden coin. Then he spots something up ahead. It's none other than Ishmael and Midiam. He tells them that he hunted a kin. They say killing a Kurt kin sounds intense, but he tells them that it wasn't actually that strong. Ishmael starts to think about the situation, saying that he wasted his energy, yet he didn't even get paid. Aidan says that Midiam told him it was a beautiful thing to help and protect the people, and life is not fun without the right outlook. Midiam laughs, saying that Ishmael has never been a fun guy. Bro just wonders why he's being called out. Aidan says that saying how they are alone means that the other evacuees let them leave. She says they tried to stop them at first, but they told them that they were going to go back and help them fight off the weak monsters. They even gave them a torch so they wouldn't get lost in the darkness, which was kind of them. But it was only because they didn't know that they were Argasa. Midiam starts saying that it was only because she is pretty, and Aidan laughs, saying surely it's because she was a kid and not because of them finding her pretty. She says she's 13, and there's a queen in the north who's already married at her age. Aidan then asks if they recognize the staff while holding it out. She says that it looks like a magic wand. He then tells them that the kin had it. She says she's going to have to concentrate really hard for this one, but she doesn't have the stamina to do it at the moment. Then she realizes something, asking if he is acknowledging her as a subordinate. He says surely he can just ask a favor from a fellow kinsfolk. She says that she wants him to do a favor too, and he says sure, and she can just inspect it tomorrow then. He jumps off the ground, up into a tree, as she asks where he's going. He says that he needs to hurry and to follow him. She asks why they're in a hurry, and we see the evacuees again. The woman who was kind to them earlier spots him, asking when he got here, saying that the kids were looking for him. He says he got a bit lost, but they're smart kids, so they'll catch up soon. More importantly, he heard shouts of victory from the village. She asks what he means, and he says, as they know, he is really good at hearing, and it'll probably be okay if they just return to the village for now, asking if she can reach them from here with something like lantern signals. She thinks about it, and then one of the evacuees yells, saying he sees something as it's lanterns by the gate, and they are now on, and that the vigilante committee must have really succeeded. Everybody starts to get happy, and Aidan tells her that she should send a small group of people to check. When she turns going to thank him, she sees that he's completely vanished, wondering where he went. Aidan says to himself he's too lazy for all of this, and if he lays down, he would definitely pass out. He then spots smoke on the mountains, wondering what it is, so he goes to check it out. We see him come to a stop as he's looking down at a campfire with soldiers. It's the soldiers who ran away from the town. They say a drought and an ogre, but the Margrave is still looking for the book instead of protecting the people. Another soldier adds that they have to do one big job and get out of here. Aidan realizes that the bastard son must be here too. Inside of the only tent with lights on, we see some treasures on the crates, and Aidan says that he's out of money, and the owl tells him that with this, he's hit the jackpot, as Aidan says that traveling does require a lot of money, and this is actually a blessing. We hear Tarkiv shout, "Are you kidding me right now?" And that the items got stolen. What are they even hired for? The soldiers make excuses that they were ambushed, and didn't even have time to be prepared. Tarkiv calls out to one of the men, telling him to say something as it's his responsibility. We see the dude eating an apple, saying if he says so, then it must definitely be his fault. Tarkiv says that he's going to cut the salaries of these two, asking if he has any complaints with that. The dude tells him to do what he wants. However, one of his belongings has also gone missing, which means it's not the work of a mere thief. Tarkiv asks what he lost, and he says he's not going to tell him that. Tarkiv tells him it's probably nothing important, so it doesn't matter. The man then tells Tarkiv that the little thief will probably move to the next village, and to issue an attack order on that village with his authority. Tarkiv says that the closest village is a public stage station and that it's managed by a noble, so it would be difficult to do so. He asks the dude why he's ordering him around, reminding him that he's the boss here. The dude smiles, saying that's fine, and he'll just plunder that place in his name then, and stabs Tarkiv in the stomach with his knife. Tarkiv looks down, panicked, asking why he would do something like this. Even his men are confused, asking what's wrong. We see the dude's eyes glow green, and he tells them not to worry, as that dagger was a gift from a witch. It starts to release a purple aura, transforms into a spider, and digs into Tarkiv's skin. Tarkiv starts to freak out. The captain tells him that he should be fine for now, and Tarkiv yells, asking him what he did to him. The man then whistles, as Tarkiv starts to feel gut-wrenching pain and falls to the floor. The man tells him to relax, saying the spider in his body just gave him a little sting, and that is all. He adds that he's just going to have to listen to him carefully, or else, the spider will start laying eggs inside of him, and once they hatch, it will surely be a spectacle. Tarkiv asks what the hell he wants from him, and even the other soldiers look worried about what to do. The captain puts his arm on his shoulder, saying that he's going to plunder the public stage station and capture the little rat who stole his item. Tarkiv looks absolutely shocked. We see it jump to another scene as Ishmael and Miriam are sleeping on their mount. Ol tells them to get up, and we see them do exactly that. Listening to it, Miriam notices something, calling out to Aidan and asking why he has two staffs now. He explains that when he looted the mercenary supplies yesterday, he found another staff that looks almost identical to the one the goblin shaman was using, telling her to take a look. Ishmael snatches it, saying that he'll handle it as it may be cursed. He begins to imbue his mana into it, checking the properties of the staff. Aidan asks what he sees. Ishmael replies that there's a mental image of green and black. Aidan questions if it was the king of the fang, shouldn't he see red mana, asking if it belonged to a different Kurt. Ishmael confirms that it does, and explains that its purpose is to search for a specific target. The staff is made to point at something, but isn't durable, so it will break easily. Regardless, its creator is definitely skilled, as it seems to have been crafted hastily, yet its performance surpasses that of most magic tools. Aidan concludes that it's a wand created to track the pages from the Book of the Divine King, and since there's more than one of these, it just means he's going to have to deal with even more trackers. For now, Aidan decides to go take a look at those he just stole from. We see him perched on a tree branch, observing the mercenary encampment. He comments that this is pretty bothersome, as the atmosphere seems to have changed drastically from last night. The mercenaries are preparing for battle, and their purpose must also be to collect the copy, the same as the goblin shaman. He expected them to act after losing the wand, but retaliating like this is beyond his expectations. Ishmael and Midian appear, and Midian asks what he saw. Aidan explains that they're planning to attack the next village. Midian points out that the target is a public stage station, and Ishmael adds that its scale is much larger than an average village. Midian reasons that they can't be acting recklessly and must have a specific reason for becoming this desperate. Aidan agrees that they might, as we see him putting on his disguise again. He starts walking forward, taking off his mask while holding both the wand and page close to his chest. When they arrive at the next village, they realize the mercenaries were not lying. It's absolutely filled to the brim with people. However, the guards aren't conducting thorough inspections like the previous ones. One of the guards tells Aidan to be careful since he's blind, and Aidan thanks him as they pass. Midian comments that she's glad they let blind pilgrims in for free. As they make their way through the market, both Ishmael and Midian look really happy. Ishmael excitedly spots a wagon from the Cossers Peddlers Association, and Midian mentions that it means they can take a break. While they look ahead at the association, Aidan appears lost in thought. We're taken to a flashback where a kid is talking to Ariel, asking if she's really the youngest herald, but reminding her that she's still the child of a traitor and shouldn't be full of herself. The man narrates that Ariel was once called the greatest genius of the clan, becoming a herald at the age of 3. Back then, the adults revered her, but he learned the truth of her abilities firsthand when she broke his ankle. But that wasn't all. Ariel was far more than just strong. As he blushes slightly before snapping back to reality, wondering what she's doing now, he's startled by a sound outside, curious about what's happening. We jump back to a few hours ago when Aidan and the others first arrived in town. They make their way to the Cossers Peddlers Association, an organization that began as a small merchant group but has since grown into a massive entity. In truth, it's one of the ghost organizations secretly run by the Herald clan, meaning all its merchants are our gossip. As Aidan and the group enter, the merchants immediately notice him and avert their gazes. Seeing this, Aidan comments that it'd be nice if they could just lay low for the day. Meanwhile, Midian and Ishmael are excited at the thought of taking a proper bath. Suddenly, some merchants call out to them, loudly asking if it's really Sir Aidan of the 108 Spirit. They mockingly ask if his 3 months of pretending to be a herald have served him well. Aidan doesn't respond, and they continue jeering, laughing at the fact that he's traveling with servants. Aidan calmly corrects them, stating that these children are not his servants. He adds that he needs help replacing the goat's horseshoes, and asks if they can manage that much. They sarcastically agree, saying that if it's him asking, they have to, but their tone drips with condescension. Unbothered, Aidan hands them a bag, instructing them to exchange it for money and to check if Blue River arrowheads are in stock. One of the men steps up, invading Aidan's personal space and sneering. He mocks him further, saying that Aidan only became a herald because of Elder Causis's recommendation. Even though the formal procedures were followed, it doesn't change the fact that Aidan fell behind in his basic training. The mockery continues as they laugh at him. Their smugness is unbearable. They're the very definition of third-rate characters, and it feels like someone really needs to punch them already. The scene resumes with the merchants continuing to mock Aidan, accusing him of stealing the items in his bag. Remaining composed, Aidan calmly requests a change of clothes and asks if they can wash the ones he's wearing. Ishmael leans toward Midian, whispering that he saw this coming but admits the situation is turning out worse than he expected. Midian, however, firmly responds that regardless of Aidan's birth circumstances, he's still a herald, and assisting him is their duty. One of the merchants tosses him a dress, mockingly declaring it as his change of clothes. Aidan looks at it and sighs, asking if they could stop being childish since he doesn't want to resort to beating them. The men laugh, questioning if he thinks they're his servants because of his supposed greatness. They go on, claiming he'd never have become one of the 108 spirits if it weren't for sheer luck. Midian, visibly annoyed, challenges them. She says if they're so frustrated, why not resolve it with a duel? Or are they scared because of the risks? She adds sarcastically that they're quite skilled, but only at running their mouths. Aidan mutters to himself, thinking she isn't exactly the best person to lecture others about the risks of a duel, referencing her prior reckless behavior. One of the merchants steps forward, dismissing Miriam's words and telling her she doesn't know anything about Aidan, claiming he couldn't even take a single punch. Miriam, unimpressed, smirks and asks if that's true before dashing forward with incredible speed. She leaps into the air and lands on the man's back, holding a knife to his throat. The man, startled, asks her what she's doing, calling her "little miss." Miriam sternly tells him that he clearly doesn't understand the situation he's in. She declares that she's of Ether descent and questions how a mere servant dares to make sarcastic remarks. She coldly advises him that if he dislikes Aidan so much, he should prove himself through action rather than empty words. She concludes by saying it's a joke to assume Aidan couldn't take a punch and accuses them of looking down on heralds. For once, Miriam seems to have taken charge in a way that's actually effective. However, the situation escalates as people begin to gather, and Ishmael appears increasingly nervous. Miriam, still furious, maintains her stance. A familiar voice cuts through the tension, revealing a man named Derek of Savin. He calmly approaches, noting that things have gotten a bit too heated. He apologizes on behalf of his comrade, asking Miriam to lower her blade, as he doesn't want his clansmen spilling blood. Miriam hesitates but eventually moves her knife away, gracefully dismounting with a backward leap. The merchant she had pinned sarcastically mutters that she already spilled his blood, pointing to a small cut on his neck. His friend dismissively tells him to spit on it and move on. Derek addresses the men, Pito and Kosaruk, firmly reminding them to focus on their duties to the association. As Derek walks past Aidan, he casually invites him to wash up and join him for dinner, leaving Aidan wondering why he's bothering with such a request. Nevertheless, he agrees. Later that night, Aidan is back in his room after taking a much-needed bath. His refreshed demeanor is a stark contrast to the tension earlier, and the scene lingers on the numerous scars covering his body, a silent testament to his past struggles. Ishmael interrupts his thoughts, questioning why Aidan tolerated the earlier insults. Ishmael acknowledges Aidan's complicated circumstances of birth, but points out that Ariel, who shares his bloodline, is revered. He recalls hearing how those who challenged or insulted Ariel were dealt with swiftly. Aidan, however, dismisses the comparison, stating that Ariel has her own way of handling things. He urges Ishmael to hurry and convince Miriam to move on so they don't end up lingering in this place like him. That evening, Aidan joins Derek in his tent for dinner. The two sit down, and Derek surprises Aidan with a question about Ariel, causing him to drop food from his spoon. Aidan responds that he hasn't heard anything, wondering why Derek is bringing her up. Derek presses further, claiming Aidan must be concerned about his older sister, but Aidan brushes it off, saying Ariel's abilities make her someone unworthy of worry. Unconvinced, Derek changes the subject, pointing out that Aidan hasn't been fulfilling his duties properly. He mentions that Aidan should focus on attacking rival merchant associations and keeping them in check. Aidan sighs and retrieves the staff he had obtained, showing it to Derek. Derek examines the staff, recognizing it immediately. He explains that it's a tool used by Kurt Godkin bishops to locate copies of the Book of the Divine King. He also mentions that Miriam's presence here is tied to her role as a messenger, delivering a letter from the district's leader. Aidan is surprised that Derek knows so much, but Derek clarifies that it's only Aidan who remains in the dark because he hasn't been submitting reports. Derek continues to chastise him, but acknowledges that bringing the staff was a decent contribution. He laments, however, that it would have been far better if Aidan had brought back something directly related to the Divine King's copy. Aidan smirks, casually remarking that he did. This revelation shocks Derek, who demands clarification. Aidan remains composed, biting into an apple, and says that this must mean all the other heralds returned empty-handed. Before Aidan can finish his bite, Derek grabs his hand, his tone turning serious. He demands that Aidan hand over the copy immediately. Aidan stares at him, utterly confused as to why Derek seems so desperate. The tension rises as we see Derek visibly panicked after Aidan's refusal to hand over the copy of the Book of the Divine King. Aidan stares at him coldly, while Derek, trying to maintain composure, asks if Aidan doesn't trust him. He insists that he can protect the copy far better than someone as powerless as Aidan. Aidan, unimpressed, counters by stating that Derek's position as a former herald makes it more challenging, especially since one of the bastard sons of Margrave, along with a group of heretics following Kurt, is heading their way. Derek scoffs at the idea, questioning if Aidan genuinely believes they'd lose against such a group. He points out that while he might have lost to Ariel in the past, he's still a former herald and far more capable than Aidan. Aidan calmly replies that this is precisely the problem. If a bunch of merchants fought too well, there would undoubtedly be rumors. Derek, losing his patience, dismisses Aidan's concerns, reiterating that protecting the copy is what truly matters. He takes another jab at Aidan, reminding him that he's weaker than Ariel. This remark causes Aidan to pause. He reflects inwardly, wondering if Derek is referring to their childhood. Back then, Aidan had been no match for Ariel, who was already in a league of her own. But now Aidan has grown stronger, far surpassing his former self. Still, he knows Ariel has also grown over the years, becoming the strongest warrior of their kind with countless followers at her command. The thought of her strength makes her seem like a distant, untouchable figure. Returning to the moment, Aidan firmly states that he plans to hand the copy over to the regional manager himself, believing that it would be the safest course of action. Derek's frustration builds as he reminds Aidan that he's his senior, demanding that he reconsider. Before the argument escalates further, a merchant rushes into the tent, clearly alarmed. He reports that there's trouble brewing at the eastern gates. Both Aidan and Derek turn to him, and the scene cuts to the eastern gates of the city. At the gates, a group of city guards stands watch, clearly on edge. One of the guards appears tense as he notices a large group approaching. The scene shifts to reveal Tarkiv and his men arriving at the gates, their numbers far exceeding what the guards had anticipated. The lead guard steps forward, his voice firm, telling Tarkiv that there are too many of them to pass through the gates tonight. He instructs them to camp elsewhere and return tomorrow. Tarkiv, however, laughs dismissively, his tone laced with arrogance. He approaches the guard and hands him a heavy bag of coins, calling it a token of gratitude for all his hard work today. The guard hesitates for a moment, looking down at the bag before glancing back at Tarkiv and his intimidating group. It's clear the bribe is an unspoken threat. Refusal is not an option. The guard captain puts Tarkiv in a tight spot, reminding him of their shared predicament as knights. If things go wrong, both of them could face demotion to priests in the king's church. Tarkiv reluctantly nods, signaling his agreement. But as the guard captain goes to open the gates, a chilling turn of events unfolds. He yanks his sword and plunges it directly into the man's skull. The captain, along with the rest of his men, begins ruthlessly slaughtering the guards. Blood spills across the scene, and Tarkiv stares in horror, protesting that this isn't what he wanted. The captain, unfazed, coldly retorts that there's no fun if they don't go this far. Tarkiv pleads that the captain is making this too complicated, especially since there are 3 gates to secure. The captain smirks and looks down at his hand, which starts to distort grotesquely. Spiders crawl out from the cracks in his skin, scuttling across his arm. With a breath, he blows them into the air, sending them toward the fallen guards. The spiders crawl into the bodies of the guards, twisting and reshaping their forms into grotesque giants. Tarkiv steps back in shock, realizing the captain is a heretic. The captain mocks Tarkiv for taking so long to figure it out. He smiles sinisterly and offers a mutual aid deal. He'll help Tarkiv exact his revenge, and in return, Tarkiv will help him retrieve the Book of the Divine King. When Tarkiv hesitates, the captain whistles. This activates the spider within Tarkiv's stomach, sending waves of searing pain through him and forcing him to his knees. The captain's men loom over him as the captain declares that no one is allowed to leave the village from this point forward. He orders his men to hunt down the rat who stole his belongings. The scene shifts to a villager stepping out of his house, noticing the commotion at the gates. Curious, he approaches, asking what's going on. The guards turned giants block his path, announcing that no one is allowed to leave. When the villager questions their authority, one of the giants palms his head like a basketball, lifting him into the air effortlessly. Giants start salivating and muttering about how hungry they are. Spiders begin to pour from their hands as one of the giant's mouths stretches unnaturally wide, resembling a nightmarish maw. One villager shuts his eyes, bracing for death, but hears a strange sound. When he opens them, he sees an arrow lodged in the giant's throat. The monster stumbles and falls as chaos erupts. Another giant turns to locate the source of the attack, only to be impaled by Aidan, who drives a spear through the back of its head and into the ground. The villagers look on, stunned, as Aidan pulls the spear out, noticing the spiders crawling all over its surface. With a grim expression, Aidan mutters, "Subordinates of the Spider Queen, Arthra." If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stick around, there's more action and excitement coming in the next part of the journey.